Alright, so, should you compare your book to bestsellers when marketing? It's not an easy question to answer. A lot of you may have done this already. A lot of you may be currently considering comparing your book to other books when you market it. I see the allure, can't really dispute that. There is definitely a certain allure to saying your book's like another book that is incredibly popular. For one thing, it might make people interested. It might make people who are interested in the original work flock to your book, or to your anthology, or whatever it is you're promoting. However, I personally see doing this as a very risky move. Let me explain why. When you compare your book to another book, you're effectively saying objectively that it's like that book. But what you may be forgetting is that that's not really how books work. There isn't any like objective book that's written by a different author that's a sequel to another work unless it's explicitly stated to be so, like the Anthony Horowitz books, Sherlock Holmes books. So if you're saying that your book is like The Hunger Games, for example, people might interpret that differently. Someone might think that means it's dystopian. I mean, sure, that's a very valid thing to think about The Hunger Games, because it is about a dystopian future, but other people might think that you mean that there's a love triangle in there, like the love triangle between Katniss, Peter, and Gale, but they might not necessarily think both. And your story might not necessarily have both of those things. So to some people, it might come across as a little bit of false advertisement. Now, of course, what I'm talking about currently is just plain marketing, like online marketing. I'm talking about what you would actually consider to be marketing. I don't think there's any real issue with comparing your book to a bestseller when you're just talking to people. Like if you're talking to friends and family about your book and they ask you what it's about or what it's like, then sure, say it's like a bestseller, which might make them interested. I don't know. It might not. Can't speak for them. But again, same principle applies. You have to be careful, and you should probably explain how it is like that book. You should probably do that in the marketing stage as well. Because if you don't explicitly explain it, people might interpret it being like the bestseller in a different way to how you mean. Now, of course, when comparing your book to another book, there's always a big issue of plagiarism. I mean, not really. I don't know how plagiarism in books really works, because I've never really taken inspiration from another book, to be perfectly honest. But a lot of authors and readers don't like seeing it when people say, oh, this book's like another book, because they may have already read the other book, and they may be like, well, I've already read that, but I don't want to read it again. Most people want you to tell them how your book is different. And they consider that to be a better form of marketing. I myself consider that to be a better form of marketing. Like, I don't hate the way that people compare their own books to others, but I feel that it's probably not the best idea in a lot of senses. For the senses I explained before, it's very risky. By all means, do it in a casual setting, but don't do it in an online setting. Don't do it over Twitter, for example. I mean, of course, if you want to do it, then you should definitely be very careful with how you do it. Don't just go around saying it's exactly like the other book. I mean, I don't think anyone would ever do that anyway, but just a bit of a warning, don't go around saying it's exactly like another book, because people might interpret that in different ways, depending on what they liked about that first book, or what they disliked about the first book, or even what they considered to be memorable. So now we're going to go to the members of the writing community on Twitter and see what they had to say about this. At Lottie the Blog says, as a reader, I hate it. I'm not interested in what the book is like or similar to. I'm interested in why it is unique. Books people usually compare to, The Hunger Games, Twilight, Divergent, Lord of the Rings / Game of Thrones, are usually great because they were unique. Yeah, I'll agree with that statement. It is a lot better to be unique as a writer, as I'm sure a lot of you will agree with me. Unless you're a parody writer, but that's a different thing. And then Lottie the Blog went on to say, as a writer, I can see the appeal of giving people an idea of where your book lies, because fiction is a big genre. But I think there are more appealing ways of doing it. Yeah, I didn't really touch on that. It is a good idea to say which genre it is, and through the specialization, but I think you should do that more plainly than just explaining what it's like. You should say, this is a dystopian, this is sci-fi dystopia, for example. You shouldn't just go, this is like The Hunger Games. At John Speakers replied, I write in the alternate history genre, whose best known authors are super bestsellers, but I did see circus reviews comparing my stuff to William Gibson's. It wasn't an accurate comparison, but heck, I'll take it since Gibson has many more readers than I do. I mean, yeah, this is something I mean to say. It's not up to you to say what the book is like as the author, because you're biased. It is, however, up to the people that read it and review it. If they say it's like that, then sure, that's fine. But you shouldn't really have the authority to say it's like this book when you're marketing it. At Drew Melbourne said, I do it all the time when talking up the book, for example in a tweet, but generally wouldn't do it in a book blurb or formal advertising. And if a reputable reviewer calls your book The Next Hunger Games, I would quote the heck out of that. But yeah, like just what I said before. It's more of a thing you can do, but do it sparingly. Anyway, that was this episode of Indie Opinions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Right on.